There are words carved into stone older than most nations alive today. Words pressed into clay along rivers that once carried empires. Words carried across deserts, memorized beneath starlight, whispered in temples, painted on cavern walls, preserved in monasteries, sung in forests, spoken by mystics who believed they were touching something eternal. They were written thousands of miles apart, thousands of years apart, in languages that never met, different symbols, different gods, different rituals, different myths. And yet when you begin to lay them side by side, not to compare doctrines, not to argue theology, but simply to listen, something subtle begins to emerge. The surface stories diverge. Yes, the imagery shifts, the metaphors change. But beneath the symbols, beneath the culture, beneath the geography, a structural similarity becomes hard to ignore. Not identical beliefs, not shared institutions, but recurring patterns in how reality itself is described. It's as if human beings, separated by oceans and centuries, kept arriving at the same deep architecture of existence, even while building very different temples on top of it. And that is where things become interesting. Because the first thing many of these traditions agree on is this: whatever ultimate reality is, language cannot fully hold it. The Tao Te Ching opens with a warning that the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. The Upanishads describe the highest truth as not this, not that, as if every attempt to define it only pushes you further away. In the Gospel parables, truth is wrapped in story because direct explanation cannot be absorbed by every mind. In the Hermetic writings, the divine is said to be beyond form, beyond category, beyond comprehension. Across cultures, across continents, the same recognition surfaces. Words can point, but they cannot contain. Human language evolved to warn of danger, to coordinate tribes, to trade goods, to survive. It was never designed to describe the totality of being. And yet that is exactly what these writers were trying to do. So they reached for metaphor, not because they were vague, but because metaphor is what remains when literal language breaks. When you are trying to describe the ocean to someone who has only seen rivers, you don't define it, you evoke it. And through those metaphors, certain insights appear again and again. The second is quiet but revolutionary. You are not as separate as you think you are. In ancient Indian philosophy, the teacher tells the student, "You are that." The essence behind the universe and the essence within you are not two. In the Christian tradition, the kingdom of God is described as being within. Mystics from multiple paths speak of unity, not metaphorical unity, but experiential unity, as the foundation of reality. The image that returns again and again is simple: the wave and the ocean. A wave rises, and we give it a name. We treat it as separate. We say it began. We say it will end. But at no point was it ever anything other than water. The form appears and dissolves, but the substance remains. And perhaps the same is true of us. We experience ourselves as isolated individuals, defined by memory, body, history, and at one level that individuality is real. But beneath it, these traditions suggest something deeper. Separateness may not be ultimate. It may be a surface phenomenon. And when we believe that the surface is the whole, something predictable follows. Fear, fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of scarcity, fear of death, which leads to the third recurring pattern. Fear arises from the illusion of isolation, and love emerges from the recognition of unity. The most repeated instruction in the Bible is, "Do not be afraid." In Buddhist thought, suffering arises from ignorance, from mistaking the temporary for the permanent, from clinging to what we believe is separate. Mystics across traditions describe love not as emotion alone, but as recognition, the dissolving of boundaries between self and other. Fear contracts identity. Love expands it. Fear says you are alone in a fragmented universe. Love says you are participating in something indivisible. And when identity expands, perception changes. This is the third pattern. The mind does not simply observe reality, it participates in shaping it. Ancient yogic texts describe the world as filtered through the fluctuations of the mind. Hermetic philosophy speaks of the universe as mental in nature. Certain Buddhist schools argue that what we experience is inseparable from the structure of consciousness itself. Two people can stand in the same room and inhabit entirely different worlds, not because one is delusional, but because perception is never neutral. It is colored by memory, belief, expectation, identity. You are not just seeing reality, you are co-creating the experience of it. And what most distorts that experience is the story you believe yourself to be. Across traditions, the ego is identified as the central obstacle, not evil, not monstrous, but limited. The ego is a survival narrative, a story built from comparison and defense. It thrives on separation because it needs boundaries to define itself. It protects identity. It protects the image. It protects the story. But as long as identity is rigid, unity feels threatening. As long as the self must be defended, love feels risky. As long as the narrative must remain intact, infinity feels abstract. And so the spiritual path, in many traditions, is described not as acquiring something new, but as loosening something false, losing the self to find the self, dissolving the small story to glimpse the larger one. And when that loosening happens, another pattern becomes visible. Everything is connected. As above, so below. Indra's net reflecting infinitely in every jewel. The balance of yin and yang, not as enemies but as complements. The cosmic tree linking realms. The web of life in indigenous traditions where nothing stands alone. Different images, same architecture. Reality behaves less like separate pieces and more like a single system expressing itself in countless forms. Patterns repeat across scale. The micro mirrors the macro. The inner reflects the outer. And once you begin to see that pattern, not in one book, not in one doctrine, but across civilizations, the argument shifts. It is no longer about whose symbols are correct. It becomes a question of structure. Why do humans, separated by time and geography, keep arriving at similar metaphysical insights? Perhaps because when consciousness turns inward deeply enough, it encounters the same terrain. Perhaps because reality has a shape, and anyone who explores it thoroughly begins to describe its contours, even if they use different words. The temples differ, the rituals differ, the names differ, but the underlying architecture keeps reappearing. And maybe that is the quiet revelation beneath all of it. The truth was never confined to a single culture. It was refracted through many, scattered like fragments of a larger mirror. And when you step back far enough to see the fragments together, a pattern emerges. Not impossible, not mystical in the dramatic sense, but structural. A structural similarity that becomes hard to ignore. And once you see the structure beneath the words, you cannot unsee it. It changes the way you read ancient texts. It changes the way you see yourself. It changes the way you understand fear, love, identity, and reality itself. Because perhaps the story humanity has been telling for thousands of years is not a story of division at all. Perhaps it is a story of remembering.